Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all well. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Gillian Askew. I'm one of the co-founders of Go for Growth, and I'm your host for today's Tender Ready training webinar. I will just get my breath back because I've run upstairs, and we'll just give it a couple of seconds for people to join. We have got a few people registered for today. Just while we're doing that, I will just run through some really quick housekeeping. Hopefully you can all see the slides on the screen okay. So like I said, I am Gillian Askew. I'm one of three co-founders and a director of a company called Go for Growth. And we are working with the West Yorkshire Combined Authority on the school transport opportunity that is currently live. So the session today is all about tender ready training, focusing in on how to answer quality questions, looking at specification, and also focusing on social value and using the social value portal tool. So if you're not in that sector or you're not planning on bidding for the West Yorkshire Combined Authority school transport opportunity, please don't feel you have to leave, but do just recognise that there will be some specifics that are around that particular opportunity. But a lot of the stuff will be translatable to other opportunities as well. So a little bit of housekeeping. The session will be recorded today. A copy of the recording and the slides will go out to everybody that's registered for the event, and they will also be sent out through the clarification question process using the Your Tender system, which is the portal that this procurement opportunity is being run through. So even if people haven't been able to make it today, a recording of the session and the slide deck will go out to everybody. We are in Zoom. So you can ask questions throughout. So it is a webinar, so you can use either the chat or the Q&A functionality in Zoom. They should both be enabled. Any problems with chat at all, please use the Q&A function. I will keep an eye on things as we go through today. We've got quite a lot to canter through in the next 45 minutes. So if I am at too high level, and you do want to have more detail, please do just remember that you can get in contact with us directly. We can do one-to-one sessions and go through lots more detail on any of this stuff should you want to. Our contact details and the bookable meetings link are in the slide deck as well. So if there are further things that you want to explore with us about the process that's being utilised or social value in this combined authority school transport opportunity, then please don't hesitate to get in touch outside of this. Any of the links that are live in this session that we're pointing to, they'll come out as live links in the slide deck. So please don't worry too much about making lots of notes, but feel free to do whatever is best for you. So let's see. So firstly, I just want to cover, and you may be a seasoned bidder, so forgive me if I'm telling you things that you already know, but for those that haven't done this often or haven't done this before even, these are the steps involved in any public procurement process. So the first step is around advertisement. So EU supply that's up there is run by Marcel. It's the Your Tender system. And that's what the Combined Authority and actually all the local authorities in Yorkshire and the Humber would use for their procurement portal. But there's also Contracts Finder and Finder Tender Service, which are search engines that are free to use, and they're hosted by the government. And you can find opportunities both live and future on Contracts Finder and Finder Tender Service. Finder Tender Service is usually abbreviated to FTS. So if you see that somewhere, you'll know that it's the Finder Tender Service. Essentially, that is for higher value opportunities, usually over 118,000 total contract value. And Contracts Finder is usually in operation above 25,000 total contract value, or for central government departments, that would be 10,000. And usually when you look at a bid, the values that are in there are a maximum. So it's the maximum spend that is available through that particular opportunity, but it's not a guarantee of what you can achieve through the contract. Some bids might specify a maximum cost that you can submit, and therefore anything above that might count as disqualification. Some bids might have day rates, etc. in there. And every process will have a clarification period in it where you can ask questions through the portal to clarify any information that would help you to put your bid together. I have got a slide on the key dates in this particular opportunity, so we'll talk through separately what the clarification period is for the school transport opportunity through West Yorkshire Combined Authority. But every public sector opportunity will have a clarification period. Our advice is always to ask clarifications as early as you possibly can. It can be really tempting to wait until later in the process to read all of the documents, but that can often mean that you would miss the clarification deadline. And actually, whilst most authorities will try and answer clarifications outside of that timescale if they can, they're not obliged to. So they don't have to do that once the deadline has passed. Once you submit your bid, it goes in for evaluation, and evaluation is the scoring process. We're going to talk through the evaluation and the selection criteria for this opportunity today as well. So you'll submit your bid, it will be scored, and out of that, the winning organisations will be notified that there is an intent to award to them. Unsuccessful organisations will also be communicated with at that point as well. And then over threshold, and I'll tell you the thresholds in a second, there is something called a standstill period, which is 10 calendar days, and it's 10 clear calendar days. The public sector can't award on a weekend or a bank holiday either. So, and lots of organisations, even if it's not over threshold, will use a voluntary standstill period. And what that standstill period means is winners and losers have been communicated with. And if you feel as an unsuccessful organisation that you wish to challenge either the result or the process, you can do so in that standstill period of 10 days. Should there be no challenges and therefore the intent to award stands after standstill, it will then go through into formal contract award. And there are notifications formally that have to go out on the procurement portal systems to show that it has been awarded and who the work has been awarded to. And I mentioned about thresholds. So the thresholds that are currently in place for supplies and services non-central government, including VAT, changed on the 1st of January 2024, and it's currently 214,904 total contract value inclusive of VAT for non-central government departments. For central government departments, if anyone's interested, the equivalent value is 139,688, again inclusive of VAT total contract value. And supplies and services are what this would fall under. Works, however, would sit at 5,372,609, and that's the same for both non-central government departments and central government. And then you have something called the light touch regime, which might be at play in sectors such as social care, for example. And the light touch regime means there is more flexibility and a higher threshold. And the light touch regime didn't change in January, actually. It's the same as it was in 2023. And that sits at 663,540. And so the contracts process, I've broken it down into effectively 6 key elements that you can see on the screen. So in any public sector tender, there will be bidder instructions. They're usually found in the invitation to tender document. Our advice is it's a key document. Try not to be overwhelmed because there can be a lot of information in there, but obviously don't ignore them either. The bidder instructions housed in the ITT are there to help you navigate the process. They could be a separate document, but often they are included in the invitation to tender. And at the front end of any procurement, there'll be a standard selection questionnaire, and there is in this opportunity. And on one of the slides, I am pulling out 3 elements of the standard selection questionnaire, which is a little specific to this opportunity, and I'll pick that up on a separate slide shortly. But effectively, there'll be a standard selection questionnaire. There are a number of sections in the SSQ. That's what it's always abbreviated to. And depending on how big or complex the procurement is and in what sector, for example, social care, you might not be answering all of the sections. So that selection questionnaire should be proportionate to the size and the type of opportunity that it is. In any procurement, there'll be a specification, and in this particular opportunity, it's classed as a statement of requirements. And effectively, what it does is it's a description of what the contracting authority wants to buy. There will also be an evaluation criteria, which is a description of how the responses that you put in your bid will be scored and how much each question is worth by a weighting. And the quality and technical and pricing questions, we'll go through an example of a quality question shortly in more detail, one that's specifically in this opportunity. But they are testing your ability to deliver the specification effectively. There will be legal terms and conditions at play for any tender. Our advice is read them obviously carefully. Ask any questions that you might have to the contracting authority through that clarification process. If you are a member of chamber, if you're a smaller organisation and don't have legal advice within your own organisation, you might not have a legal team. If you have access to chambers of commerce, if you're a member of your local chambers, or if you're a member of the Federation of Small Businesses, for example, or other membership organisations, you might have access to free legal support. So you can also ask some questions through there. And then finally, there's the feedback process. So at the end of the process that we've talked through, that award process, when you get to intent to award on the previous slide, when you're notified whether you've won or you haven't won, you should get some feedback from the contracting authority. And what you should get as a bare minimum is your score versus the winning bidder's score. And what you should hopefully get is some detailed feedback or an explanation of those scores, so that you can use that feedback to help you improve going forward. And in the new regulations that come into force later this year, there are some changes in how feedback is given, and it will make it actually quite a lot better for providers. So we'll have more information on that in other webinars. You can see on screen that 2, 3, 5 and 6 are in blue and they're underlined. And that's because they're live links to a set of lunch and learn sessions that we did. We're running them again this month. So we're just about next week to do the legal terms and conditions webinar. And then we'll have the feedback webinar. So that's on the 20th. We'll have the feedback webinar on the 27th. But they're last year's ones, so you can have a link through to them to get some more detail on those particular items on the screen. So for this particular opportunity, this is the document set. I hope it's helpful to see all of the documents that you should be able to get through the portal. So you've got the document guide, and the numbers are the reference of the documents as per the portal. So you've got a document guide, your invitation to tender document. You've also got a social value invitation to tender. On this particular opportunity, the Combined Authority TOMS guidance, and the TOMS are the themes, outcomes and measures. So there's a guidance document there, and then you've got your appendices. What I also wanted to just call out was, what are the things that you need to upload as part of your submission? So you need to upload Appendix 2. Which is the selection questionnaire. The social value element is done through the social value portal, and we're going to have a look at the social value portal live today. You would be uploading Appendix 3A, which is the award quality and social value questions, Appendix 3B, which is the pricing document, Appendix 4, which is the form of tender, and then Appendix 8, which is TUPE confidentiality agreement. One of the things that the Combined Authority is keen for us to stress is there are a number of routes, 37 out of 51, and we'll come to TUPE quite often in today's session. There are a number of routes where TUPE is at play. The sooner that you can complete Appendix 8, which is the confidentiality agreement, and upload it via the portal, the sooner you'll get whatever information is available via the Combined Authority on TUPE. So if you haven't done that already, we would suggest that you upload that Appendix 8 as soon as you possibly can. And I mentioned we'd talk about key dates on this session. So this again is for the school transport specific opportunity. So the invitation to tender was issued on the 7th of March this year. The clarification question deadline is 12 p.m. on the 21st of March. So that's Thursday next week at 12 o'clock noon. So if you have got any clarification questions that you want to ask the Combined Authority, you need to make sure that that's done by 12 o'clock noon on the 21st of March next week. The Combined Authority have then committed that they will respond to all of those clarification questions if they haven't already, at the very latest by the 28th of March, also at 12 p.m. So what I know is most authorities will usually answer clarifications as quickly as they possibly can, but what the Combined Authority have done is they have put a deadline date in there, so you know that at the very latest you'll get your clarifications answered by 28th of March at 12 p.m. The deadline for submitting your bid is 10th of April at 5 p.m. And then completion and evaluation and the standstill period will all be done and will be into standstill by the 10th of July 2024. Standstill period ends on the 23rd of July 2024, and contracts issued to successful tenderers 5th of August, with a start date and commencement of services of the 2nd of September 2024. So those are the key dates. All of those dates are in the invitation to tender document, so you can see them through the portal, but hopefully it's helpful to see them summarised there. And I mentioned that I would call out a few things in the selection criteria. So how selection criteria works, the two criteria that's at play in a public sector bid environment is selection criteria and evaluation criteria. Selection is really looking at the organisation. It's testing things like your insurances, your accreditations, your licenses. It will be looking at the size and capability and capacity of the organisation. So it's where you'll be asked about your references and your financial and economic standing. And there are three things in this that I wanted to just pull out because it's very specific to this opportunity. So at 8.2 in the selection criteria, you'll be asked to confirm if your organisation has fewer than 250 employees, and that's so they can understand who is a small to medium enterprise or not. So usually a SME, there are a couple of definitions, but a SME can be 0 to 249 employees. So that's what they're asking that question for. At 8.3, they're asking about timetable. So you will be asked to confirm on a self-certification basis that you will adhere to the timetable proposed by the combined authority for the route or routes that you are bidding for. If an alternative timetable is proposed, please confirm that this will arrive no later than 30 minutes before school starts and will depart no later than 20 minutes after school finishes. So there are some caveats around that timetable, but have a read of that 8.3 and make sure that you're happy that you are able to confirm that you will adhere to the timetable proposed by the combined authority, or that you'll be submitting alternative routes in the way that it is asked for in the bid itself. And then at 8.4, it's asking about capacity. So you will be asked to confirm that you can meet the minimum capacity requirements for all of the routes that you are bidding for as outlined in Appendix 7, which is where the routes and lots are all the information for those things are held. And that's to make sure that if, for example, you bid for all 51 routes and you won all 51 routes, that you can meet the minimum capacity requirements for all of those routes that you've bid for. So again, it will be on a self-certification basis, but the combined authority will be asking you to make sure that you can meet the minimum capacity requirements for however many routes it is that you have chosen to bid for. So we're going to just jump into specification a little bit. So what is a specification? The West Yorkshire Combined Authority call this a statement of requirement, but it is a specification by any other terminology really. And without wishing to tell you things that you already know or teach anybody to suck eggs, it basically is what the contracting authority wants to buy. And it's one of the most crucial documents in any bid, in my opinion. And our advice would always be that one of the first jobs that you would do is to read through the specification or statement of requirements really thoroughly, making a note of any questions that you might have that you would want to flow through the clarification process, and noting any evidence that you might be able to use during your bid submission. And you can also obviously make a note of any gaps that you might have in being able to deliver the specification in the way that the authority is after. And if you have a bid or no bid sort of situation going on, those gaps in the specification can be really helpful in helping you to decide whether this is the right thing for you to tender for or not, and whether you can meet the minimum capacity and capability requirements, all the rest of it. When you're completing in any tender, the quality or technical questions, your answers will be relating back to the specification. Effectively, the questions in the quality or technical questions will relate to the specification. It's worth noting, actually, that you can only be tested in evaluation criteria on something that is within the specification. So all those questions that you are asked to answer will relate back to the specification. So if you can relate your answers back to the specification with the relevant evidence, then that will hopefully help strengthen your scores. And so evaluation criteria, I've talked about there are two different types of criteria in any public procurement: selection and evaluation. Evaluation is looking at how you will do something. The questions should be framed on a forward-looking basis, and our job as tenderers is to answer the question, show how the specification will be delivered through answering that question, and backing that answer up with as much evidence as we possibly can. And if we can do that, then that will help us maximise our scores. And we'll talk about that in a second in a little bit more detail. What we recommend is reading the scoring carefully and answering the questions with the scoring in mind. I'm going to show you the evaluation criteria that's at play in this particular opportunity in a second. Even better, if you can ask someone else in your organisation to have a read through and to look for the evidences and the relevant specification bits that's housed in your answer submission, then that would be great. If you're saying you can do something, are you showing the evaluator the how of that? And are you showing them where it is in the specification that they've asked you to do it? And so in this particular opportunity, this is the evaluation criteria. This goes from 0 to 100%. You will sometimes see 0 to 5, 0 to 10, something like that. But effectively, every evaluation criteria will be along a similar sort of line. So a score of 0 in this case would be unacceptable. And what it's saying is it doesn't meet the requirements. So it doesn't comply. There's insufficient information to demonstrate that the tenderer has the ability, understanding, experience, skills and resources and quality measures required to provide the services, with little or no evidence to support the response. And if you see up at the top in excellent 100%, it's the same as good, but the tenderer additionally provides exceptional demonstration of ability, understanding, experience, etc., and identifies factors that will offer potential added value over and above the combined authorities' requirements that are set out in the specification, with evidence to support the response. So the evaluation criteria is a really helpful tool to help you structure your answer when you're putting your submission together. And so talking about answering questions, and I've got another slide on this next, but the guidance that we try to give, and it is a very subjective thing, tendering. So every individual or business will find their own way, but our experience and our advice is that we'll break down the quality or technical question into the doing elements, the verb elements, and we'll try and answer those bits specifically and evidence those bits and cross-reference those doing bits back to the specification. And I've highlighted that on the next slide. You will often find that it can be a real easy trap to fall into to replay the question as part of your answer. You're just wasting word count if there is a word count constraint, or a page count if there is a page count constraint. And it might seem really, really obvious when I say make sure you only answer the question that's asked, but I've been in procurement for 30 years. I've worked in public sector letting procurements. I've worked in not-for-profit and social enterprise organisations where I've been answering procurements, and it's really easy actually to tell the story that you want to tell that doesn't necessarily relate to the question that's been asked. So one of the checks and balances is always to make sure that you have only answered the question that's asked. And that doesn't mean that you can't offer that added value, but it has to be relevant to the question that's been asked. So you can go over and above in what you have to offer, but if the question isn't asking you about how many vehicles you have in your fleet, don't tell them unless it's really relevant to do so, for example. And so if we look at this particular slide, this is one of the questions that's in the tender. And so what I've pulled out in yellow is what I think personally is the doing elements, the bits that you can physically tick off in your answer. And the green bits are guidance, information, or constraint. So if we have a look at question 2A, so you're being asked to provide the total number of drivers that will be employed for the delivery of the services, the number and ratio of spare drivers that are available, and the number of drivers with the appropriate licenses and certifications who will be carrying out that regulated activity involving children, and young people. And in 2B, that's all about the training that the drivers will undertake, including but not limited to safeguarding, health and safety, customer relations, and any other training. And you're also being asked to summarise any safeguarding or health and safety policies that are in place, and you're being asked to upload copies of those things. And the constraint here, or the guidance here, is so you're being pointed to Appendix 1, the Statement of Requirements, the PCV driver license, cleared DBS enhanced checks, and certificate of professional competence card. So it's sending you to the relevant part of the Statement of Requirements, the specification. And it is saying to you from a guidance perspective, when you're bidding for multiple routes or lots, please specify the numbers by route or lot in your submission. And then at the bottom, you can see there is a constraint. So you have 2 sides of A4 at 12 aerial, and attachments don't count towards the response length limit. So the safeguarding and health and safety policies that you're asked to upload separately, they don't count into your page count, but your response must be a maximum of 2 sides of A4 at 12 aerial. And we'll talk about page and word count constraints and what happens if we go over them when we get to the key pitfalls at the end. But our view of breaking down a question in this way could be helpful in that when you're reviewing your answer, you can check that you've ticked off the various elements of the question that you're being asked to look at and answer. And you can check that you've gone back to the relevant part of the specification. And so you're referencing that in the right way. And you can also check that you have the so what of my statement. Have I evidenced that? If I'm saying that I've got a really robust and rigorous training environment for drivers as a statement, am I evidencing that? What's the detail behind that? How do I bring that to life for the evaluator? And so breaking the question down in this way could be, and it might not work for everybody, but it could be really useful in terms of an approach to checking and double checking that you've got everything in there that you need. So I'll just check if there's any questions at this point. I know that we are really cantering through. There's no questions in the Q&A just now. So we'll move on to social value, actually. Social value, I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with social value. So I'm just going to spend a couple of seconds just talking about what social value is and how it aligns to the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the SDGs either, but effectively, social value is driven by something called the Public Services Act, the Social Value Act, which is dated 2012 and was assented to law in 2013. So social value as a construct in public procurement isn't new. It's certainly from becoming a public duty in 2013. We're now into our 11th year of trying to embed social impact in all that we do in the public sector. And the national priorities for that are set out in something called the National Procurement Policy Statement, which if you look on gov.uk, you can read, it's a public-facing document, you can read the National Procurement Policy Statement. But effectively what it says is that there are a number of themes that are important. So things like creating new businesses, jobs and skills, tackling climate change, tackling waste, and increasing supplier diversity, innovation and resilience in our supply bases. And what it's really doing at its heart is reinforcing that the message that procurement's not just about the lowest price, it is about the need to take a broad view of value for money. And so what you'll see is social value is becoming more and more embedded in procurements, still at a lower weighting. So in this particular one, I believe it's a 10% weighting, but you'll see that on your ITT documents with all the scoring criteria and weightings. But in others, it might be higher. In the new legislation that's coming out in October this year, the new regulations for public procurement, we are seeing a real deepening of that commitment to social and environmental responsibility through procurement. So this agenda is only going to climb in terms of importance. So if you're not familiar with it, now is a really good time to build that familiarity. There's something called the Sustainable Development Goals, which aligns to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and that's been adopted by all United Nations member states back in 2015. And effectively what the Sustainable Development Goals do, they provide a blueprint for peace and prosperity for both people and planet, and both now and into the future. So it looks at what future generations will need. And at its heart is the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and lots of targets. And effectively, they're an urgent call for action by all countries, both developing and developed, in a global partnership. And the UK government are committed to the Sustainable Development Goals. And if you look at something called the Social Value Model, for example, which again is on gov.uk, you will see the UN Sustainable Development Goals flowing throughout the Social Value Model. And if in effect, what the Sustainable Development Goals do is they recognise that ending things like poverty and other deprivations have to go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education, but also reduce inequality and spur economic growth, all at the same time as tackling climate change and working to preserve the planet's oceans and forests. So it's trying to pull together all of those targets and aims, if you like. And in this particular opportunity, there is a social value element. And if you've read the social value ITT document, you might already know this, but you would need to register for the social value portal. If you haven't registered already, the link is on the screen, but you can also find that link on page 7 of the updated social value ITT document. Once you've completed your registration, you'll receive an email to confirm that you've successfully registered for the tender, and the email will include a username, which is typically your first name, last name at socialvalueportal.com, and you'll get a password link, which expires within 48 hours of being sent. So if you follow that link, if you haven't already, you can, even if you're already registered with Social Value Portal, is my understanding, you would need to register using this link. And so social value, I mean, it is about more than just jobs, but we are pulling out here the local jobs measure specifically. And then what I'll do next is I'll go into the social value portal and we'll have a look at what's in there live on the webinar. But there is TUPE at play, and as I understand it, it's 37 of the 51 routes has TUPE, so only 14 would not have TUPE apply to it. And what is in the, so this is a direct lift from the ITT document, and effectively what it means is if the route or the contract involves a TUPE transfer or may involve a TUPE transfer, the local jobs measure NT1, and I'll show you that in the system shortly, you can't record local jobs in there. And if you do record local jobs in there against a route that has TUPE or may have TUPE, what this is saying is that any targets that are there, they'll be discounted to 0. Where it does not involve a TUPE transfer for the local jobs measure, you can use NT1. So you should be recording new and existing local jobs that are created or sustained directly as a result of this contract only. So those routes that don't have TUPE attached to them, if it's a new route that you would be bidding for, and therefore you will be creating jobs, you can include that in the NT1 measure, and I'll show you that in a second. Or if you're an incumbent and you would have to release any staff in losing that route, you would be able to include them in the NT1 measure as sustaining that role, but only on the routes where TUPE doesn't apply, is my understanding of it. TUPE is a complicated piece of legislation. I don't profess to be an expert on TUPE. If you have any questions on whether you can include a role or not in the NT1 or anywhere else in Social Value Portal, or if you have any questions on TUPE itself, please do use the clarification questions before the deadline next week. So please do seek further information if you need it. So let me just jump into... Now, hopefully what you can see is the Social Value Portal on your screen now. So once you've registered for the opportunity, this is what you'll see on your home screen. So if I jump in here, this is the live opportunity. Now, I've not added any TOMs yet. So what it tells you here is the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. It's got the contract reference on there, the submission deadline, time and date, the contract duration, the weighting is 10%. And you are asked to submit an estimated contract value in Social Value Portal, and the guidance in the ITT says that you should set that at 200,000. And it tells you how that they would use that route information to calculate your social value. And effectively what you'll be doing is adding a theme and outcome or measure. So add a TOM. So we'll go in there initially. And this is NT1 that we were just talking about. So if you did want to add NT1 where TUPE didn't apply, you would tick the box and add selected. And this is where we'll put the information in. So if you were a new provider, you weren't an incumbent, for example, you were bidding for 10 routes, and the guidance in the Social Value ITT says you should assume that you will win all of the routes that you are bidding for. And if there are any caveats to any of that, you would include those caveats in the delivery plan. But let's assume that you're bidding for 10 new routes, and therefore you would have 10 new drivers. TUPE doesn't apply to any of those routes. You would effectively be putting 10 drivers in for 3 years. And so it would calculate your social value in FTE as a part of that. So that's how you put it in. You would hit save, and then you will see here that there's no description entered. So it will save it, it's calculated it, but then you would need to go back in here and add this. So what you'll be writing in here, and you have 1,000 characters to do so, you'll be writing your summary statement in line with the requirements on the screen. So what NT1 is asking you to write about is your strategy for directly employing your target number of local people on this contract. For example, if you plan to advertise in local newspapers, which ones would it be? How regularly would you do that? Or if you're going to cooperate with local job centres, for example, specify which ones and how you'll approach engaging with them, for example. And 2 things will happen with this. So what you write in here will form part of the qualitative scoring, which has got a scoring matrix against it for social value. So I will just come out of there for now. And the quantitative will go on a proportion of the financial proxy that's calculated when you put your FTE or whatever else it is in. So that's how you would do it. Do make sure, although I've not put any description in there, you will need to add a description in there, and it will affect your scoring negatively if you don't add a description in there. And every description has a summary of what you're being asked to do. So you can highlight it, and that's what you need to write against it. But you can select the theme. So you might be looking at the environment, for example. So let's just go back. Let's clear that. So we'll add a TOM. So if we have a look at the environment, for example, so if you think through those 10 routes that you are bidding for, that there will be a saving in CO2 emissions, you can select that, for example, and add selected. And then again, you will put your baseline in, tons or kilos, whatever your measurement is, your estimated saving. And then again, you will be entering a target description. So let's just put some made up numbers in there, and then you will go into your target description and a much more detailed one there. So that's what your target description is asking you for. You have 1,000 characters to write in there. So that's where the social value elements will be in terms of the social value portal. So if I flip back over to the slide deck, so I'm going to finish off, and we will have time for questions in a second with some common pitfalls for bids. So these are actually quite generic. We asked a number of public sector organisations as Go for Growth for what the common pitfalls were. And both as a procurer and a bidder, I see these all the time. So some of them we talked about already, so I won't go over them again, but not answering the question we've chatted about feels very obvious, but it can be really easy to not do that. Not submitting all the documentation required. So we know already in just one question in this particular opportunity, any safeguarding and health and safety policy you're asked to upload. So double check all of those things and make sure you have uploaded them. Caveating is usually very difficult. It's usually a no-no, but in this particular opportunity, in the social value element, what you're being asked to do is calculate your social value as if you're assuming that you're winning all the routes that you've got. So for example, you might put a caveat in your delivery plan that says, we are bidding for 10 routes. If we win all 10, we would employ a team leader as an additional person. If we only win 5, that's not possible. Something like that. So any conditions that are significant or substantial to your social value, you can put those caveats in the delivery plan for this one. Generally speaking, caveating is quite difficult for evaluators to deal with, but in this situation, on that social value specifically, that's where to use it. The specification match, what you do needs to match what they're trying to buy for obvious reasons. And I'm a big fan of not reinventing wheels where they don't need reinventing. So if you are using previous bids or information that you've used in previous bids, there's no issue with that whatsoever. However, the health warning is probably very self-explanatory. Double check that you have assessed the relevance and that you've removed any previous references to either bids or previous clients or anything like that. A lack of evidence will often count negatively against your scores, because what the contracting authority are always really looking for is evidence to back up the responses that you've given. I will do this, and this is how I will do it, and here is some evidence of that backs that up, of either how I've done it before or the infrastructure I've put in place or will put in place to do this going forward. And that should be as relevant and proportionate as whether you are an experienced, long-standing organisation in that sector or new to that sector. And that's why evaluation is looking more forward as opposed to, so it's not a competency-based question in terms of tell us where you did this before, it's tell us how you will do this in the future. And if you can back that up by any sort of evidence, that's always going to be useful. Missing key information will always be an issue. So don't include superfluous information either, the opposite of that, the antonym of that. Make sure you do put your key information in, and make sure you don't add any superfluous information in there. Word count and page count, be aware of them. If there is one, it will be very clear both in the question, and it should be clear around the constraints for every single question relevant to that question. If you go over a word count, or you go over a page count, or if there's a font size specification and you don't adhere to it, then those things will simply be redacted. So you might even be disqualified if you have used an incorrect font, for example, to make your 2 pages include more. But at best, it will simply be redacted. Anything over the page count or anything over the word count, an evaluator just won't see. So it's pointless doing it. Don't assume anything. So don't assume that the evaluator knows you. Don't assume that even if they do know you, or even if you're an incumbent, that they can take any of that information into account. You are scored against the evaluation criteria and your answer against the question. The bids and the scores are not compared to other organisations until all the scoring is done. So at the scoring point, at evaluation point, you're compared with what you've written down in relation to the question. And so don't assume that somebody will know that you will do it. If you want the evaluator to know something, you need to write it down. And that selection questionnaire compliance, not meeting the minimum compliance can often be an issue. So do make sure that you've got your accreditations, your policies, your license, your procedures, etc. in place before you take part in the bid. And finally, some key messages. Again, they will feel so obvious, so forgive me, but read all of the documents really carefully. Make a note of the key dates. We've summarised them in here and they'll come out to you, but they are in the ITT document as well. Ask any questions as early as you possibly can, because it's important to do so and you might not be able to do later. Check the safeguarding requirements. In this particular opportunity, there's more detail of them in the contract terms, and TUPE might apply. So make sure you understand the implications of this and that you've filled out that confidentiality agreement as early as possible. And when you get to the point of submission, make sure you've uploaded everything that you need for submission, and then check, double check and triple check before you actually submit your documents. And it can feel like a really lonely place bidding. We know this. Help is on hand. Go for Growth is here to help. We don't charge a fee for any of the help that we offer to the marketplace. So you can come to us. You can look at any of our video tutorials in our video library. You can come to myself and my colleague Lauren, either via email, mobile, or through our bookings calendar, and we will do all we can to help you. And if you would like to stay in touch with us, you absolutely can. We don't spam you. We'll talk to you about opportunities and training and courses and things that we're doing, but we won't tell you about what we had for breakfast or where we're going on holiday or any of that stuff. And you can always opt out at any time. And that was a whistle-stop tour, and we have got a minute or two left. So hopefully that was really helpful. If there are any questions, please do feel free to flow them into the Q&A. If you would rather have a one-to-one chat with either myself or Lauren, Lauren is on leave until the middle of next week, until Thursday next week, actually. So if you go into that bookable calendar, you might want to choose me for the moment. But Lauren will be back next Thursday as well. Or if you just want to drop me an email, please do feel free. And my mobile number is on the slides. We'll get the slides out to you by latest on Monday, along with a copy of the recording from today. And as I said, it will also be pushed out to the combined authority so that they can include it in the clarification process. And so we have got a question on, will this be the process for every tender? So some of the stuff in this particular webinar has been very specific to the school transport opportunity through the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. So some of the extra selection questions were very specific. However, broadly speaking, the process that West Yorkshire Combined Authority are going through is very similar to what everybody else would go through. So WYCA do use the social value portal, not everybody else does, but you will be being asked both quantitative and qualitative social value questions in lots of cases, or potentially only qualitative questions on social value. So there's lots of similarities between what we've gone through today and lots of other tenders in the public sector. So if you are here today and you're not bidding for the school transport for West Yorkshire, hopefully the information is still useful for other opportunities that you might look at. Thank you for that question. We are at time now and just a minute over. I know that it's a really busy time for everybody, so I won't keep us all here. If there is anything else that you would like to chat to me about, do feel free. Thank you for taking time out of your calendar today to join me, and hopefully it's been useful. And if you do need anything, just give us a shout, and hopefully we'll speak to you soon. Thank you again.